All right. Cinco de Mayo, second reading of the day. Field Manual 556, War Department Field Manual, MHI Copy 3, Military Transportation Service and Theater Operation, War Department, December 1945. War Department Field Manual 55-6, Military Transportation Service and Theater Operations, United States Army, War Office, United States Government Printing Office, Washington, 1945. All right, War Department, Washington, 25th December, Washington, 25 D.C., 27 December 1945, Field Manual 556, Military Transportation System and Theater Operations, publishing for information guidance for all concerned by order of the Secretary of War, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Chief of Staff. Official Edward F. Witzel, Major General, Adjunction General, Distribution. I'm not going to read. Chapter 1, General Scope and Purpose of Transportation, Separate Theater of the Transportation. Chapter 2, Organization, Headquarters, Area Transportation Office. Chapter 3, Operation General Control, Operation Coordination, Planning, Utilization of Civilian Transportation, Evacuation, Security, and Amphibious Operations. Chapter 4, Forms and Methods of Transportation, General Rail Transportation, Highway Transportation, Water Transportation, Other Forms of Transportation, Installation and Organization, Ports, Depots, Tagging Areas, Table of Organization, Units, and Appendix Reference and Index. Chapter 1, Scope. This manual describes the mission, the function, policies, organization, operation for the military transportation services and theater operation. It deals with the activities of transportation corps and other personnel assigned attached for the services to related organization of the transportation corps, special units assigned to oversee commands with the transportation corps at the table organization, and equipment for the description of the transportation zone of the interior. Technical Manual 55205. Purpose of the manual suggests the patterns of organization for the military transportation service, which they are generally applicable to all theaters of operation. Is published as a guide for a staff and commanding officer for use in training. Section 2, Transportation Service. Definition. The military transportation service and theater operation is an organization for necessary coordination with the control and operation of such means the transportation has been specified in theater command or to effective the non-tactical transportation personnel supplied for the military force of the theater civilian transportation requirements to the extent to which theater commander has been accepted responsibility of them. Such services under the military control and supervision, although it may be manned and equipped to the whole in part of by civilians and non-military means of transportation. 4. Mission. The military transportation service of theater operations is responsible for non-tactical movement to and in from the theaters of personnel and property in which armies has a primary interest, except in those instances of responsibility of shipments to the theater of that has been established belonging to another agency. And for the efficiency, utilization, transportation facilities assigned for the operation. 5. Guidance, general policy. General pilots policy affecting transportation and theater operations are set forth in field manuals over the 100 series. Federal service regulations are pertinent to the War Department publication. According to such policy, the theater commander may establish transportation service to affect the necessary conditions of the control of all and part of the means of the transportation not engaged in tactical movement or assigned to separate commands and general means of the transportation as assigned for the field armies and theater Air Force, and establishing the communities communication zones are accept the transportation service normally operates for the means of the transportation placed under control of the emergency situation for the theater command may direct and who operate with control of any and all of the include above the exemptions of the military transportation service normally established under the theater chief of the transportation who should be an officer of the transportation corps. B. The special functions pertaining to the transportation theater operation are determined by the theater of chief of the transportation for the theater command. Such determination is usually attached by a number of factors which are often vary greatly. Among the most important of those geographical location of the theater, major terrain features, climatic conditions, distance involved, existing transportation facilities, relationship with all our allies and civilian populations, the personal availability of the enemy capabilities. These similar factors are influence the decision with the extent of the centralization, decentralization required transportation service operation, and this is in turn to determine to some extent of the type of the territorial headquarters organization to be established. Function, operation, organizations of the transportation services established by the large land masses for its instance necessary to differ from those transportation services established in the theater consisting of a large ocean area which are mainly widely separated insular commands. 6. Functions. The primary function of the military transportation service is movement of the personnel supplied with a non-tactical mission with is active for the common carrier service for the military service of the theater to meet the civilian transportation requirements for which the theater command is accepted responsibility. In the performing of this function, the military transportation service is utilized for the operating of the agency for the military railway service. The highway transportation service, inland waterway service within theater, coastwise for shipping of the service and exercise movement control over the non-tactical theater area of the transportation shipments of the petroleum products by pipeline. 7. Unit. The type of the organizational equipment allotments and personnel with the special instructions issued from time to time for the War Department to describe the detail of the organization of the Transportation Corps units installation to meet the changing situation, adjustment, and the strength of the composition of Transportation Corporation. The units are made with the Theater Chief of the Transportation. Further details of Transportation Corp units and installation. See Chapter 5. Section 3, Theater Chief of the Transportation General. Theater Operation for the Chief of the Transportation, for the Chief of Safety, for the Chief of the Transportation, Chief of Technical Services, Owner for the Commanding the General of the Communications, Owner of the Service of Supply, if in such command exists. He also is Special Staff Officer for the Transportation Theater Command and concerned with the policy planning. In addition, with the normally acts as traffic manager for the theater as the chief operating officer for the military transportation services, in which capacity is concerned with effecting with the policy planning of the relating of the transportation when become with the factors mentioned with the paragraph 6. He does not function as an operating chief of the military transportation services as whole, as he usually retains the operating control over these parts of the systems which are or may be engaged in movements between major commands and within the theater. In this case, the inter-command of the transportation system is usually operated with the transportation officer in the area. See Section 2, Chapter 2. Responsibility, and generally subject to all of the consideration. Theater Chief of the Transportation responsible for the planning and effecting the non-tactical transportation for the personal property with which the Army has primary interest. He is reasonable for the procurement of the issue. The Transportation Corps equipped with the supply for the determining the concordation with the appropriate services, the suitability of the non-tactical transportation equipment they require within the theater. He specifies the duties, including taking appropriate staff action on all transportation matters, planning and coordinating with the higher headquarters with all other services or transportation activities within the theater in which the Army has been interested, coordinated, assigned with the Transportation Corps personnel, supplies, equipment to various subordinate commands for the theater. D. Coordinate regulating of the movement of the personal supplies, equipment between the major echelons of the command, between the zone for the interior and theater, between the theater and the theater of the command areas, operating and exercising operational control over the non-tactical rail, highway, or inland waterway transportation and theater with the shipping. F. Exercising movement and control over the non-tactical intra-theater air pipeline transportation through the inter-theater operation of the air transportation command, and operation details are expected from this control. Chapter 2, Organization. Section 1, Headquarters. 10, General. The Transportation Service Organization includes the Administrative Office of the Chief of the Theater Chief of the Transportation and Control of the Office of Military Railway Service, the Highway Transportation Service, the Inland Waterway Services, and the intra-theater coastwise shipping services, movement of the control of the theater area. The transportation pipeline services. See Chapter 4. Staff. 11. Step representation. The theater of the Chief of the Transportation is a member of the theater command with the special staff. In addition, the Chief of the Service is on the staff of the Commanding the General of the Communications Zone Service of Supply when such of the commands exist. If there are any combined general staff with the Supreme Allied Headquarters in the theater with the Chief of the Transportation may be a member thereon in order to coordinate the United States Army transportation matter with those or allies. Theater of Chief of Transportation also normally represented in all major agencies, the United States and allied, which have to do with the important aspects of transportation affecting in theater. Such representation may be reciprocal. Assistant to the theater chief of transportation is normally assisted by one or more deputy chiefs of transportation as executive officers, division chiefs in charge of the staff and operating divisions who are in transportation officers. 13. Office of Theater Chief of the Transportation. The Office of the Theater Chief of the Transportation may be organized various ways to suit the overall organization of the theater, local circumstances in general. The less complex organization, the more efficiency it will be. Usually the pattern of the organization will be based on logical separation for the division concerned with the control of the operation from the ones concerned with the administration. The two types of divisions may be grouped under the deputy of the operation with the responsibility of such matters in planning, movement, control, statistic, railway, highway, port, and water, inland waterways, air and pipeline transportation, and the deputy for the administration responsibility supply with the personal publication, training, general administrative measure matters. Regardless of the type of the type of organization existence, it will usually be necessary to divide the divisions into the branch and sometimes the branch into the section. The chief of the various transportations agencies, for example, the military railway service, highway transportation service, they usually serve the staff officer to the theater chief of the transportation, in addition with the performing the functions as head of the operating agency, which such is not the case. The headquarters of the operational service are in the field. The staff division of the service in the office of the theater for the chief of the transportation and advisory with the coordinating capacity. 14. Function. The various subdivisions of the office of the chief of the transportation perform staff operating functions as assigned to them by the theater chief of the transportation. These normally include Coordination with the applicable general with the special staff division in order to integrate the basic supply plan with the theater with the transportation capability, the formulation of the transportation corp with the lands with the logistics support with all projected operations, the conducting coordination with the site for the ports and rail lines, road nets, inline waterways, air nets, pipelines to establish their possibility, availability, capacity, the conduct of the coordination site with the personnel and with the service available for the need, with the coordinated with the plans for the new construction, reconstruction, transportation facilities with the chiefs of the applicable service, the control of all the movement within the responsibility of the theater chief of the transportation coordinated with the traffic theater command. If the establishment of movement, the priorities in issuing the general movement of the instruction when necessary to the performing the functional joint with all other allies affecting the compliance with the concerned agency for the personnel, ensuring the most effective employment of all the forms available to transportation by balancing the load according with the capabilities of each of the forming transportation, examined with the daily and weekly targets to operate with the field agency to assure the accomplishment of the movement plan association, deserting destination of the troops and supply of the equipment prior to the arrival by the use of the advanced information obtained from the zone of the interior. Therefore, headquarters can coordinate with the discharge of the vessel disposition cargo to prevent port with transportation congestion, maintain liaison with the United States Allied Military Force Civilian Transportation Agency, analyze traffic dispatch, advise the depot situation reports, and complying with the disseminating progress reports and other statistical comparisons for operational use. Directing, supervising all ports, marine transportation operation under the U.S. Army control in the theater, including the inter-island and coast-wide shipping, maintaining liaison with the United States Allied Naval and Civil Marine agencies, complying with disseminating marine shipping advice and other marine intelligence, determining operating requirements, supervising maintenance for the repair of vessels, floating equipment, and acting in the staff capacity of the shipping of the effect of the inter-theater coast-wise shipping services. Alright, D. Planning the necessary railway equipment, directing the application for such available equipment to meet the military requirements of arrangement for the rail shipment of the troops and supplied with the conformity with the general movement plan, acting with the staff capacity on the matters affecting railway assigned with the military railway service, complying with the disseminating information from the staff of the troops supplied with the movements of the rail. Determining equipment and personnel requirements of the high transportation operation, establishing policy of the theater command with the governing control of the movement of the vehicles, all types, including the civil and organic supply of the vehicles, main routes which have been designated and appropriate authority for the use by the military transportation services, preparing for the plan's efficient utilization of the highway transportation, preparing and disseminating information from the staff of the troop and supply movements for the highway transportation, acting on staff capacity for the manners affecting on highway transport service. Acting in the staff at capacity with the inland waterway service, coordinated with the inland waterway transportation with other forms of the transportation, preparing plans, disseminating information for the movement of the troops, and supply with the inland waterways, and maintaining liaison, pertinent military civil agencies, estimating requirement of the directing application of equipment and personnel, preparing plans, availability, efficiency, inter-theater airlifts, maintaining liaison with the appropriate agency, use of airlifts, coordinate with the use of airlift for the general movement plan with the exercise movement control of the airlift of the theater chief of the transportation, collecting and disseminating information on airlifts for the movement control purposes, supervising contracted air services. Alright, preparing plan for the availability, efficient with the pipeline transportation, coordinated with the appropriate authorities of the agency for the use of the pipeline construction, transportation, exercising movement control of the pipeline transportation, coordinated in its use of the other forms of transportation, complying with the disseminating information on the pipeline transportation for the movement and control purposes. Preparing plan for the utilization native to transportation, coordinating porterage, animal, watercraft, coordinated with the use of the native transportation, other forms, supervising native contract transportation, preparing, disseminating information from the native transport, maintaining liaison civil agency concerned with the native transportation or labor, supervising transportation corps to supply activities, anticipate and coordinate with the requirements, processing contracts, expedited product items required, receiving processing request project, supervising storage, initial issue of the transportation corps equipment and supplies, maintaining records to show status to supply all the times, all the times. Alright, the example of the Office of Theater Transportation starts with the Theater Transportation branches off the administrative liaison's assistance. From there, it goes into the branch of the Theater of Chief of Transportation. We'll read the Deputy for Administration runs over it has three different branches, Administration, Supply, and Personnel. The other Deputy for Operations has movie control, air, or pipeline, and then Planning and Statistics, and then Deputy of Air of Operations has Water Division, Highway Division's Railway Division. From the Transportation Chief of the Chief of Transportation, cross lines with the field organization with the Military Railway Service, Inland Waterway Service, Highway Transportation Service, and Intra-Theater with service, staffing, depots, and I can't read that, and then Section Transportation Officers. All right, K. Performing all the interior and internal and administrative functions connected with the mission of the Military Transportation Services, including the Operational Message Center, the issuance of the publication, conducting official affairs, the formulating training plan for the policy of the Transportation Corps and the theater, establishing, supervising Transportation Corps, military training plan programs, planning, supervising training programs for civilian works employed with the Transportation Corps, formulating personnel policy, recommending allotments, making sub-allotments for the Transportation Corps of military personnel, receiving the processing all requests for the requirements of the Transportation Corps of military personnel, procuring, classifying, assigning, and promoting and separating civil personnel, maintaining personal records. Section 2, Area Transportation Office General. The Theater of Chief of the Transportation establishes the Transportation Office of major territorial subdivisions by the Communication Zone services supply when such commands exist. In general, such offices are established in base and intermediate with the advanced sections are headed by Section Transportation Officers. Section 16, Section Transportation Officers. Section Transportation Officers are normally member of the section of the commander staff. These advise for the section commander with the transportation manner. He is supervised the coordinated with the director of the activity of the various agencies with the transportation services in section with the under the technical supervision of the theater chief of transportation, and in general the section of the transportation officers takes such action except with specifically reserved to the theater chief of the transportation as is necessary advisable to accomplish within the section of the mission. Transportation services section transportation officers maintain a staff of composed administrative assistant specialists, various forms of the transportation using within the transverse area of the regulation of the transportation usually affected through traffic regulation units. Traffic regulation units established with the territorial subdivision of the theater may be attached to each of the transportation services for the purpose of affecting the plan with the policy directed by the Office of the Theater of the Chief of the Transportation General. The traffic regulation units are assigned to the section transportation officers and are responsible for the routing of the personnel and cargo, reporting progress of the movement of the range of the division, measurement of the clear of the traffic conjunction. One example of these functions attached with the operating of the agency transportation services and transmittal orders to convoys passing along with the main line of the communication which has been designated for you for the military transportation services conducted with such liaisons being necessary with the civilian authorities. Traffic regulation units activated within TOE and E55 See Chapter 5 of the table to provide with several different types of table teams from which furnish the necessary personnel to effect the coordinated with the movement of the control of the water, highway, rail, air, pipeline, inland waterway transportation as directed by the higher authority. Each team is composed of the one officer and four enlisted men that can be used in any combination of multiple situation requires. The team may be grouped under the appropriate headquarters to further form the units within the use of the transportation intersection offloading points of major control points. Members of such teams sometimes referred to as the RTOs or Rail River Road Traffic Officer, or an ATO, Air Traffic Officer, a WTO, Water Traffic Officer, etc. Traffic regulation units assigned with the service section transportation officers serve the clearing of the agency acceptance, processing, and movement of requests based on the competent order and authority in addition to the accepting and processing movement requests for these units serve the liaison capacity with the operating agency. The relationship in each of the cases being handled with the team trained with the transportation problems, particularly with particular operating agencies in which it deals with, coordinated with the other operating agency established through the section of the transportation officers. Decentralization, when is normally advisable, the theater chief of the transportation maintains centralized control over the transportation facility operation. Chapter 3 of the control over the inter-command transportation may be impracticable in case of which, where they are territorial division theater or widely separated, as in the case of the insular command in large ocean areas, the communication difficulty, and in such instances, operating responsibility of the theater chief of the transportation may be confined with the technical supervision, theater coordination, movement between the major echelons of command and from the zone of the interior or other theaters. On the other hand, responsibility of the section transportation officers for the operation with the echelons of the commander are similar to those outlined generally with the theater chief of the transportation. 19. In combat zone. In the case of the transportation of the combat zone, the theater chief of the transportation coordinates with the appropriate officers on his staff of the commander of the Army group of the Army smaller commands which are operating with independently with such coordinated with the essentially because of their interchange with the traffic between the rear and the forward area of the combat zone. Transportation officer, preferably officers of the transportation corps, function under the Army group and Army commanders. Chapter 3, Operations.